Hey guys, thank you for watching the Slat Rock channel. You know, for every wrestler that makes it in the business, there's a long list of others who don't. Sometimes they fail because they're not talented enough, or other times they fail because the top brass just don't like them, and sometimes their failure is their own fault. We're talking about certain choices that wrestlers made which had varying degrees of detrimental effect on their individual careers and on some occasions led to their push being taken off or them being fired. There are plenty of wrestlers who screwed themselves over. Here are the top 19 wrestlers who screwed their wrestling careers. Jake the Snake Roberts. Jake Roberts had it all. He was one of the most charismatic men of the Hulkamania period and would always be present in featured matches or feuds. Who doesn't remember his matches with Andre the Giant and Macho Man Randy Savage? Unfortunately, Jake also suffered from a lot of substance abuse problems. There came a point where WWE just couldn't trust him anymore, and without that trust, there was no way he was going to succeed. The story of Jake Roberts has a happy ending at least. He cleaned himself up with the help of Diamond Dallas Page and was welcomed back into the WWE with a spot on Raw and a place in the WWE Hall of Fame. Titus O'Neil. Titus O'Neil's a fun-loving guy who enjoys wrestling. He has a great look and can connect pretty well with the crowd. Unfortunately, he loves having fun just a little too much. Titus was known for joking around too much backstage, and everything really came to a head on the Raw where Daniel Bryan announced his retirement. As everyone was leaving the stage at the end of the show, Titus grabbed Vince McMahon by the arm. He was suspended for 90 days before fan backlash caused it to be dropped to 60 days. It was later revealed that Titus was trying to pull Vince away so Stephanie could leave the stage first. There's a time and a place for messing around with the boss, and the day one of the most beloved wrestlers retires due to injury is not one of them. Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy has managed to maintain a pretty loyal fan base despite all his shortcomings and failures. Jeff was a known drug user, and his addiction problems were a major factor in his release from WWE. Jeff was even arrested when police found his stash, and as a result, he's not allowed outside of the United States anymore. Jeff found a more forgiving home in TNA, but even that wasn't enough to clean him up. Jeff showed up in no condition to compete at a Victory Road event where he was supposed to beat Sting for the title. Jeff was in such bad shape that the match was quickly changed to a no DQ match where Sting pinned him in 30 seconds. Jeff has since cleaned up his act, but his inability to leave the country and his troubled past may be enough to keep him out of the WWE. Triple H. Triple H screwing himself over was one of the reasons that Stone Cold Steve Austin did so well, and so perhaps that's a good thing. Triple H was part of a behind-the-scenes group called The Clique. It was him, Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Shawn Michaels, and Sean Waltman, or if you prefer, X-Pac. In 1996, Hall and Nash left WWE for WCW, and they had a group hug in the middle of the ring at a Madison Square Garden house show. It's a moment forever known as the Curtain Call. It destroyed kayfabe, and needless to say, Vince McMahon was not happy about it. Triple H was the only member of the Clique who was severely punished for it. He was set to win King of the Ring that year, but instead Austin won, and the world saw the birth of Austin 316. Triple H would later recover from the incident and go on to become a multi-time world champion, of course, but things were rough after the Curtain Call. Lana. The ravishing Russian Lana, if you believe the dirt sheets, is a heat magnet who is either really loved or really hated by people behind the scenes. She constantly breaks kayfabe on Twitter, starts fights, and generally draws too much negative attention to herself. Two major incidents that stand out are announcing her engagement to Rusev on Twitter and starting a fight with Paige. The announcement of her engagement caused the storyline she was in to be cancelled, as Rusev had just proposed to Summer Rae on TV and Lana was with Dolph Ziggler. It's almost ironic that a woman who would constantly tell the crowd to shut up would be too much of a gossip. Mr. Perfect. Fittingly, Hennig was a charismatic figure in both WWE and WCW. During a fateful plane ride in 2002, that all quickly ended. It is famously known as the plane ride from hell, and the flight effectively ended his time with WWE. The 2002 plane ride from London to the States after the WWF's Insurrection pay-per-view was anything but a comfortable and relaxing journey. A number of scuffles broke out, including one between Hennig and Brock Lesnar. Hennig's actions were enough for WWE to release him from his contract. Scott Hall. Scott Hall was a major player in both WWE and WCW. He's most remembered for being a key figure in the NWO with his greasy hair and toothpick and his time as Razor Ramon. Unfortunately, he suffered from the same problems as Jake Roberts before him. Hall was a notorious alcoholic and would occasionally turn up to shows in no condition to compete. The major promotions just couldn't trust him anymore, and he really screwed himself over. His story also has the same ending as Jake Roberts. Scott Hall would also live with DDP, clean himself up, and be welcomed into the WWE Hall of Fame as Razor Ramon. Bad times don't last, but bad guys do. Carlito. Carlito had an interesting gimmick in WWE. He had a decent run until his time came to an end when he violated the WWE's wellness program and refused to attend a rehabilitation facility. There's been some rumors going on for quite some time that he might return, but as of now, it's a waiting period for Carlito fans. Juventud Guerrera. Juventud Guerrera was a major player in the WCW Cruiserweight division and put on wrestling clinics with the likes of Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, and Chris Jericho, who unmasked him. Things were looking great for Juvi until an incident during a WCW tour of Australia in 2000. Juvi attacked police officers after they tried to detain him for being naked in a hotel hallway and screaming. Juvi was reportedly under the influence of PCP, fined $1,800, suspended for the rest of the tour, and ultimately released. Road Warrior Hawk. Road Warrior Hawk was one half of the Road Warriors. One of the most remembered storylines for the Road Warriors happened during the Attitude Era. Hawk would show up to matches seemingly drunk or on drugs. The worst part of the storyline is that it was based in reality. Hawk suffered from drug addictions and alcoholism and would occasionally show up in no condition. Hawk would quit the company over the storyline and passed away in 2003, just a few years later. Daniel Bryan. Before Daniel Bryan started the Yes Movement, he was part of the original NXT. He was in the same series as Wade Barrett and was massively over with the fans even back then. Most people remember that series of NXT because it led to the birth of the Nexus. The Nexus has a shocking debut where they came out to the ring, tore it to pieces, and took out anyone who stood in their way. During the segment, Daniel Bryan choked Justin Roberts with his tie. Bryan would be legitimately fired. They would bring him back later on when the heat died down, and he did well in the company, but the fact remains that he got himself fired for doing something he shouldn't have. Daniel Bryan later revealed that, "One of the reasons that I got fired in 2010 was for spitting in John Cena's face. It was one of two things that got me fired. It was choking Justin Roberts with a tie and spitting in Cena's face right before I kicked him in the head," Bryan said. "It was those two things." Alundra Blaze. Alundra Blaze, also known as Medusa, was the first WWF Women's Champion since the belt was retired in 1990. She won the championship in 1993 and was the star of the women's division for a few years before she jumped ship to WCW. One of the first things she did on WCW was to throw the women's championship in the trash. Along with the belt, she also trashed any chance she had of ever going back to the WWF. She was effectively blacklisted by WWE for 20 years before she was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2015. Mr. Kennedy. From his hardcore wrestling style, eccentric personality, and over-the-top introduction, microphone included, Ken Anderson quickly rose through the WWE's power rankings. At WrestleMania 23, he literally found his way to the top of the rankings by beating out 4 other superstars to win the Money in the Bank ladder match. Then his problems started. WWE suspended Anderson for violating their wellness policy shortly after winning Money in the Bank. Then a series of shoulder injuries sidelined him, and the book finally closed on Anderson's storyline and career when his in-ring performances began to decline and he was deemed too stiff by John Cena and Randy Orton. Mabel. Mabel, perhaps better known as Big Daddy V or Viscera, had a few good years in the WWF in the early 90s before suddenly being sent to the bottom of the card. While the reason for this has never been officially known, Kevin Nash has described Mabel as being unsafe. Apparently, he never tried to protect the people that he worked with, and that's something you just can't do if you want to succeed in the wrestling business. Mabel would have 3 stints overall with the WWE, but his weight, his work style, and his attitude would stop him from ever entering the main event again. YOKOZUNA. YOKOZUNA is one of the best remembered big men in the sport. His pure size made him stand out from just about anyone. Unfortunately, his size would also work against him. Yokozuna's weight ballooned while he was in WWE. He gained over 100 pounds during his career. He was unable to work properly, and WWE dismissed him so he could lose some weight. Even though he managed to lose a lot of weight, it was never enough to satisfy WWE, and he was unable to pass the medical checks laid out by the New York Athletics Commission and never returned to WWE. Dolph Ziggler. Dolph Nicky Ziggler got his start with WWE as a member of the Spirit Squad. He was later repackaged and came into the company in 2009 as Dolph Ziggler. Dolph has always managed to have the fans behind him, but the people in charge have always flip-flopped on him. He's been pushed and buried more than any other wrestler in history, and he is partly to blame for this. Dolph screws himself over by selling so well that he makes other people look too good. He looks so good in defeat that he barely ever wins. He also throws himself around a little too much and has had a number of concussions as a result. He got a concussion shortly after finally winning the World Heavyweight Championship through cashing in Money in the Bank, and he's never been trusted properly since. If he toned down the selling and worked a safer style, he'd be in a better position in the company. Paul London. Paul London is rightfully one of the most charismatic and high-flying wrestlers of the last decade. He's famously known for his tag team matches with Billy Kidman and Brian Kendrick. All of these attributes didn't stop WWE from firing him in November 2008 following 18 months of poor judgment and worse instincts. His downfall started during the infamous and illogical limousine explosion of Vince McMahon. During the segment, Paul London was seen laughing at Vince while he was walking towards his limo. Vince was undoubtedly furious, which led to his push being taken away. The worst was yet to come for this high flyer. The following year would see similar incidents occur. London would behave badly, messing up both live and pre-tape promos, and goof off on a regular basis. His refusal to take his job or his character seriously, combined with a reputation for arguing with the writers and being very vocal about his issues with storylines, made his release inevitable, and London was given his marching orders in November of 2008. The Ultimate Warrior. There's a good reason WWE released a DVD called The Self-Destruction of the Ultimate Warrior. Warrior was an unsafe worker and was unwilling to put people over. There are two major incidents that stand out as examples of Warrior screwing himself over. The first is when he held Vince McMahon up for more money. He demanded more money to work SummerSlam 1991 and was fired shortly after the event. He would return to the company but prove once again that he couldn't be trusted to the level they needed to trust him. He worked a match with a young Triple H. Hunter approached Warrior before the match and wanted to plan out a long match that made both of them look good. Warrior dismissed Triple H and the match became a squash match instead. Warrior would be just as unrelenting in WCW and retired in 1998. Vince and Warrior would later bury the hatchet, and Warrior was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame just a few days before he passed away in 2014. Bret Hart. Vince McMahon likes to say that Bret screwed Bret, and in a way he's right. Vince McMahon was left with very little choice but to pull the Montreal Screwjob and screw Bret Hart out of the WWF Championship in 1997. Bret refused to lose to Shawn Michaels in Canada in his final match. He offered to drop the title to Shawn on any other night, in any other match, or just vacate the title. McMahon relented and said that he would accept Bret winning in Montreal and vacating the title the next night on Raw. Everyone knows what happened that night at Survivor Series 1997. Bret Hart never trusted Shawn Michaels, Vince McMahon, or the WWE until they finally let go of the past, and Bret returned in 2005 and was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2006. So that's our list. What do you guys think? If you agree with our list, don't agree with our list, you think somebody else should have been on this list, go ahead, drop us a comment below. Don't forget, if you like this video, you can hit that subscribe button, and every time we have a new video just like this one, you will know. And if you'd like, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Google+. And as always, thanks for watching.